funny how everything my ex-wife touches falls apart.
The tracker showed her car hadn't moved from the luxury loft complex in 18 hours. I stared at my phone screen in the dim light of my garage, coffee growing cold in my hand, watching that little blue dot mock me like a neon sign advertising my wife's betrayal. Melinda had told me she was at her sister's place dealing with family drama. Her sister lived 43 miles in the opposite direction. My name is Dean Blakely, and I fix cars for a living. 43 years old, hands permanently stained with motor oil, and apparently too stupid to see what was happening under my own roof. But here's the thing about being an auto electrician. You learn to trace problems back to their source. Every short circuit, every blown fuse, every dead battery has a reason. And right now, my marriage was throwing sparks. I'd installed that GPS tracker 3 weeks ago, disguised as a diagnostic dongle plugged into her Honda's port. Mel thought I was being sweet by monitoring her car's health. She had no idea I was monitoring her lies. The garage door rattled as another gust of wind hit it. Storm was coming. I could feel it in the electrical tension hanging in the air. Same tension that had been building in our house for months. "Dad?" My 17-year-old daughter Ivy appeared in the doorway between the garage and the kitchen, wearing her oversized pajama shirt. "Mom's not back yet?" "She's at Aunt Lisa's," I said, not looking up from the phone. Ivy leaned against the doorframe, studying me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Aunt Lisa called an hour ago. She wanted to know if Mom was feeling better." The coffee mug slipped from my fingers and shattered on the concrete floor. Ivy didn't flinch. She just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to say something that made sense. "Your mom's been working late," I managed. "At that co-working place downtown? The fancy one with the loft apartments upstairs?" My blood turned to ice water. "How do you know about that?" "Because I saw her there last week when Jenny's dad was showing me the building. Jenny's dad is a realtor, remember? Mom was in the coffee shop with some guy in a black shirt. They were..." Ivy looked uncomfortable. "They were sitting really close together." I knelt down and started picking up pieces of the broken mug, buying time to think. 24 years of marriage, 17 years of raising Ivy. All those nights, Mel claimed she was building her consulting business after giving up real estate. "What did the guy look like?" I asked. "Younger than you, expensive haircut, driving a black Tesla." That narrowed it down. In our blue-collar suburb, Teslas stuck out like peacocks in a chicken coop. I knew exactly who drove the only black one I'd seen around town. Seth Cranmore. 31 years old, ran a luxury co-working space called Innovation Hub, and had been one of Mel's real estate clients 2 years ago when he bought his building. I'd met him exactly once, at a barbecue Mel dragged me to. Smug little rich boy with soft hands and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Go to bed, sweetheart," I told Ivy. "School tomorrow." She hesitated. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just tired." After she disappeared upstairs, I pulled up Seth's business website on my phone. Sure enough, there was a photo gallery of the building, including the executive loft spaces on the 3rd floor. Perfect for privacy. I grabbed my toolbox and headed for Mel's Honda. Installing a second tracker took 15 minutes. This one went under the rear wheel well, completely invisible, with a battery life of 6 months. If she was playing games, I needed to know all the rules. My phone buzzed. Text from Mel. "Staying overnight, Lisa having panic attacks, love you." I typed back, "Take care of yourself, love you too." The lie came easily. Maybe I'd been practicing without realizing it. I spent the rest of that night in the garage, pretending to work on a customer's Camaro while really planning my next move. By dawn, I had a strategy that would make Sun Tzu proud. The rain started as I drove to work the next morning, heavy drops exploding against the windshield like tiny grenades. Perfect weather for what I had planned. "You look like death warmed over," said Louis Grant when I walked into his junkyard at 7 a.m. Louis was my oldest friend, a former boxer who'd taken more hits to the head than any man should survive. He owned 3 acres of rusted cars and scrap metal on the edge of town, plus enough knowledge about electronics to power a small city. "Need a favor," I said. "Bad kind or good kind?" "The kind that could get us both arrested." Louis grinned, showing the gap where his left canine used to be. "My favorite kind." "What are we building?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a schematic I'd sketched. "Car alarm modification. Needs to be loud enough to crack windows and programmable from a distance. How far a distance? 2 miles should cover it. Louis studied the drawing, his scarred knuckles tracing the circuit lines. This'll work. Make it sound like the world's ending. What's the target? Black Tesla Model S. Seth Cranmore's ride? I looked up sharply. You know him? Know of him. Comes by sometimes looking for vintage parts for that stupid loft of his. Pays cash, tips well, but treats my customers like they're beneath him. Louis spat into the dirt. Always figured he was the type who'd steal another man's wife. How long have you known? About a month. Saw them together at that Italian place on 5th Street. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. The rage hit me like voltage through wet hands, but I kept my voice steady. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to figure it out yourself. Man finds out his wife's cheating from his buddy, he might shoot the wrong person. Louis was right. I needed concrete proof before I made any moves. And I needed to stay smart about it. How long to build the alarm mod? Give me 2 days. What's your timeline? However long it takes to gather enough evidence to bury them both. Louis nodded slowly. I want some advice from an old fighter? Shoot. When you throw the knockout punch, make sure they can't get back up. I spent the next week becoming a detective in my own life. Every receipt in Mel's purse, every charge on our credit cards, every mile on her odometer. The evidence piled up like autumn leaves. Coffee shop loyalty card with 16 stamps in 2 weeks. Mel claimed she hated coffee shops. Hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown. The same afternoon, she told me she was showing houses on the north side. A appointment reminder text. Thursday, 2 p.m. Deep tissue massage. Mel had told me she was meeting with a potential client Thursday afternoon, but the smoking gun came from Ivy, completely by accident. Dad, can you give me $20? She asked one evening, looking up from her homework at the kitchen table. What for? Gas money? Jenny's dad is taking us to look at college campuses this weekend. I handed her a 20. Which colleges? State University and that private one downtown, the one where Mom's friend works. My hand froze halfway to my wallet. What friend? The guy with the Tesla, Seth something. He was telling Mom about their business program when I saw them at the coffee shop. Seth told your mother about college programs? Yeah, he said she should definitely check it out for her consulting business. Ivy looked puzzled by my expression. Why? Seth didn't work at the university. He ran a co-working space. The only reason he'd be discussing college programs with my wife was if they were planning some kind of future together. That night, after Mel claimed she was working late at the library, I drove downtown and parked across from Innovation Hub. Third-floor windows glowing warm against the rainy darkness. And there, parked in the space marked Reserved for S. Cranmore was Mel's Honda. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching shadows move behind those windows. Around midnight, the lights went out. I waited another 30 minutes before driving home. Mel's car pulled into our driveway at 6:47 a.m. I pretended to be asleep as she slipped into bed, smelling like expensive cologne I'd never worn. Morning, beautiful, I whispered against her neck. Morning, she murmured back. Library was dead quiet last night. Got so much work done. The lie slid out of her mouth like silk. 24 years of marriage, and I'd never realized what a talented actress my wife was. Time for the real show to begin. Step 1 was changing the locks. I called a locksmith friend who owed me a favor and had him install new deadbolts while Mel was out showing properties that afternoon. I told him I'd lost my keys, which wasn't technically a lie. I'd lost the keys to my marriage months ago. Step 2 involved our joint bank accounts, perfectly legal since both our names were on everything. I transferred half the money to a new account in my name only, leaving enough to cover the mortgage and utilities. If Mel wanted to play house with Seth, she could do it on her own dime. Step 3 required Louis's finished product. She's a beauty, he said, holding up a device the size of a deck of cards. Transmits on commercial frequencies, so there's no way to trace it back to us. Range of 5 miles, battery life of 48 hours once activated. Installation, under the dashboard, wired into the existing alarm system. Takes 10 minutes if you know what you're doing. And the sound? Ever heard a tornado siren having a nervous breakdown? I grinned. Perfect. Installing it took longer than expected. Seth had some aftermarket security features that I had to bypass, but by Thursday night, his Tesla was carrying a very special surprise. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. No violence, no property damage that couldn't be explained as a malfunctioning car alarm, just noise. Lots and lots of noise. Friday morning, I activated the device remotely while sitting in my garage, drinking coffee and watching the news. My phone showed Seth's location via the tracker I'd installed, Innovation Hub parking lot, right on schedule. The sound started at exactly 8:15 a.m. Even from 2 miles away, I could almost hear it. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Unknown number.
What the heck did you do to my car?
Seth's voice was shaking with rage.
I'm sorry, who is this? Don't play games with me, Dean. Your psycho device is going to get someone destroyed. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Is everything all right? The line went dead. I smiled and poured myself another cup of coffee. According to local news, the malfunctioning car alarm lasted 90 minutes and could be heard 6 blocks away. 3 people called 911 thinking it was an emergency siren. The fire department showed up. A tow truck finally hauled the Tesla away after the battery died. Seth's insurance company classified it as a manufacturer defect and covered the towing costs. No police report was filed because there was no evidence of tampering. Phase 1 complete. You're in a good mood lately, Mel observed that evening, finding me humming while I organized my toolbox. Spring weather always cheers me up, I said. Seth mentioned someone vandalized his car yesterday. Broke the alarm system somehow? That's terrible. People these days have no respect for other people's property. Mel studied my face carefully. You two have met, right? At that barbecue last year? Vaguely remember him. Rich kid with the co-working space? He's not that much younger than you. If you say so. She left the garage, shaking her head, probably wondering why I seemed so relaxed about everything lately. The truth was, I hadn't felt this clear-headed in months. Having a purpose tends to focus the mind. That weekend, while Mel claimed to be researching market trends at the library, I put phase 2 into motion. Every cheating spouse makes the same mistake. They get comfortable with their lies. Mel had been using the same excuses for months, which meant I could predict her schedule better than she could. Saturday afternoon, library session meant another rendezvous at Innovation Hub. I waited until her tracker showed she was safely inside, then made my move. The Honda was parked in the visitor lot behind the building, probably to avoid being seen from the street. I slipped a small device under her rear bumper. Not another tracker, but something much more interesting. Bluetooth audio transmitter connected to her car's sound system. Range of 50 feet, voice-activated recording capability. Basically, I'd turned her Honda into a mobile confession booth. The first recording came Sunday morning. Mel in the car with someone else. A man's voice I recognized as Seth's. We need to be more careful, Seth was saying. Dean's been acting weird lately. He doesn't suspect anything, Mel replied. Trust me, I know my husband. He couldn't find his own shadow without a flashlight. What about your daughter? Ivy? She's too busy with school to notice anything. Besides, she likes you. Kids make me nervous. She's 17, Seth. Hardly a kid. There was a pause, then Seth's voice again. When are you going to tell him? Tell him what? About us, about leaving. Soon. I want to make sure all the paperwork is in order first. The business partnership, the loft lease, all of it. My hands were shaking as I saved the audio file to my phone. Business partnership? What business partnership? The answer came Monday morning when I accessed our joint email account, something I'd never bothered checking before. Buried in Mel's deleted folder was a contract draft between Cranmore Consulting Solutions and Innovation Hub Management. She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to leave me and go into business with Seth, using money from our joint accounts to fund it. 24 years of marriage, and she was treating me like a business acquisition she wanted to liquidate. Time for phase 3. I spent Monday afternoon at the courthouse, researching business licenses and partnership filings. Public records are a beautiful thing when you know how to read them. Within 2 hours, I had everything I needed. Seth's Innovation Hub was hemorrhaging money. 3 months behind on his business loan, 2 previous partners had sued him for fraud, and the building was in foreclosure proceedings. He wasn't some successful entrepreneur. He was a con artist looking for his next mark. And my wife was about to become his biggest victim. Part of me wanted to warn her. The part that remembered our wedding day, our first apartment, the night Ivy was born. But that part was getting smaller every day, burned away by the steady voltage of betrayal. Instead, I made a phone call. Regional Business Licensing Department, this is Karen speaking. Hi, Karen. I need to report a potential fraud case involving business partnership documents. What kind of fraud? Someone's attempting to use forged financial statements to secure a partnership agreement. I have copies of the doctored documents. I spent 20 minutes outlining Seth's creative accounting methods, providing specific names and numbers I'd found in Mel's deleted emails. Karen was very interested, especially when I mentioned the federal tax implications. We'll need to investigate this immediately, she said. Can you email us those documents? Already sent. And you are? A concerned citizen who believes in honest business practices. I hung up feeling like I'd just lit a very long fuse. Tuesday brought the first explosion. Mel came home from her client meeting, looking like she'd been hit by lightning. Everything okay? I asked, looking up from the carburetor I was rebuilding. Fine. Just tired. But her hands were shaking as she poured herself a glass of wine at 4 in the afternoon. Wednesday, I activated the second phase of the car alarm system. This time, it wasn't just noise. It was programmed to play audio files through Seth's rebuilt sound system. I'd edited together the juiciest parts of their recorded conversations, set to broadcast on infinite loop whenever the car started. According to my surveillance, the Tesla's new alarm system activated at 7:23 a.m. in the Innovation Hub parking lot. Half the neighborhood heard Mel's voice describing exactly what she wanted to do to Seth in his loft bed, followed by Seth explaining how stupid her husband was and how easy it would be to clean him out in the divorce. The recording lasted 15 minutes and repeated 3 times before Seth managed to disconnect his car battery with a crowbar. This time, he didn't call me. He was probably too busy explaining to his neighbors why his car had been broadcasting pornographic audio at maximum volume. I was whistling when Mel got home that evening. Seth's having car trouble again, she announced, not looking at me. Maybe he should buy American next time. It's not funny, Dean. Someone's obviously targeting him. Why would anyone target Seth? Because, she caught herself before finishing that sentence. Because what? Nothing. Never mind. But I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was starting to connect the dots, and the picture they formed was making her nervous. Thursday morning brought the business licensing department's first visit to Innovation Hub. I wasn't there to see it, but the local news covered it on the 5 o'clock report. Local business under investigation for fraud. The reporter didn't mention Seth by name, but anyone who knew about Innovation Hub would recognize the building in the background. Mel didn't come home Thursday night. According to her tracker, she spent the evening at Innovation Hub and didn't leave until almost midnight. Friday morning, she was waiting for me in the kitchen when I came downstairs. We need to talk, she said. About what? About what you've been doing? I poured myself coffee and sat across from her at the table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 17 years. I've been working. Same as always. Don't lie to me, Dean. Lie about what? Seth's car problems, the business investigation, all of it. You think I'm somehow responsible for Seth's troubles? I know you are. I sipped my coffee and studied her face. She looked exhausted, probably from staying up all night trying to figure out how much I knew and what I planned to do about it. Let me ask you something, Mel. If I was targeting Seth, why would I do that? Because you found out about us. There it was. The admission I'd been waiting for. Found out about what? You know what? I know that you've been lying to me for months. I know you've been spending time with Seth when you claimed to be working. I know you've been planning some kind of business partnership behind my back. I leaned forward. What I don't know is why. Her composure cracked. Because I'm unhappy, Dean. I've been for years. So you decided to have an affair and steal money from our joint accounts to fund it? I wasn't stealing anything. That money is as much mine as yours. The money you were going to invest in Seth's business? The business that's under federal investigation for fraud. The color drained from her face. How did I find out about the investigation? Same way I found out about everything else. I paid attention. Mel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I want a divorce. Okay, she blinked. Okay? Okay, we'll call lawyers Monday morning. Just like that? Just like that. She stared at me for a long moment. You're not going to fight for our marriage? What marriage? You checked out months ago. I'm just catching up. That afternoon, Mel packed 2 suitcases and moved into Seth's loft. She left Ivy a note explaining that sometimes adults need space to figure things out and that she'd be back to work things out soon. Ivy found me in the garage that evening holding the note. "Is Mom ever coming back?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Do you want her to?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "The woman I married? Yes, the woman she became? No." Ivy nodded slowly. "I've been waiting for you to figure that out. Smart kid. I get it from my dad." That night, I implemented the final phase of my plan. Seth's business investigation had uncovered some interesting connections. Innovation Hub wasn't just hemorrhaging money, it was laundering it. The fancy co-working space was a front for moving cash from a half-dozen shell companies, all tied to a real estate development scheme that had been bilking investors for 2 years. The FBI raided Innovation Hub at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but the local news covered it extensively. Seth was arrested on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The reporter mentioned that the investigation had been triggered by an anonymous tip. Mel wasn't arrested, but she was questioned as a potential co-conspirator due to the business partnership documents found in the loft. According to her tracker, she spent 4 hours at the federal building downtown. She came home that evening. "I need to get some things," she announced, standing in the doorway between the kitchen and garage. I didn't look up from the engine I was working on. "Most of your stuff is still upstairs." "What did you do, Dean?" "I fixed cars, same thing I do every day." "You ruined Seth's life." "Seth ruined his own life." "I just helped the authorities catch up with him." She was quiet for a long moment. "Why?" "Because he was going to ruin yours too, and because he disrespected my family." "What about us?" "There is no us. There hasn't been for months. I made mistakes." "You made choices." Mel started crying then, big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Part of me wanted to comfort her, the way I had for 24 years whenever she was hurt or scared. But that part was gone now, burned out like a blown fuse.
I can change, she whispered. I don't want you to change.
"I want you to be honest about who you are." "Who am I?" "Someone who was willing to destroy our family for a con artist with a fancy car?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "The divorce papers will be ready Monday," I continued. "Ivy stays with me. You can have whatever's left in the joint accounts after I pay the lawyers." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I finally looked at her. "Fair would have been you asking for a divorce before you started sleeping with Seth. Fair would have been you being honest about being unhappy instead of stealing money to fund your affair. This isn't about fair, Mel. This is about consequences." She left without taking anything except her purse and keys. Sunday morning, I found Ivy in the garage sitting on my workbench. "Is she coming back?" she asked. "Probably not." "Good." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. 17 years old, smart as a whip, and handling this better than most adults would. "You okay with all this?" "Dad, I've been waiting for you to kick her out for months. She was making everyone miserable." "Including you?" "Especially me. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend you don't notice your mom lying about everything?" I hugged her then, long and tight. "We're going to be fine." "I know. You're the one who fixes things, remember?" Monday brought the divorce lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia who specialized in high-conflict cases. "Your wife's attorney called this morning," she informed me. "She wants to negotiate a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" "Half the house, half your business, half your retirement accounts, and joint custody of your daughter." "What does she bring to the table?" Patricia consulted her notes. "Significant debt from the business venture with Mr. Cranmore, plus potential liability from the federal investigation." "So she wants half of everything I've built, and none of the responsibility for the mess she created?" "That's one way to put it." "What's our counteroffer?" "She keeps her personal debt and potential legal problems. You keep the house, the business, and primary custody. She gets visitation rights and whatever's left in the joint checking account." "How much is left in the checking account?" "About $300, I smiled. "Make the offer." The negotiations took 3 weeks. Mel hired and fired 2 lawyers, threatened to contest the divorce, and even showed up at my garage one afternoon claiming she wanted to work things out. I was under the hood of a Mustang restoration when she arrived. Ivy helping me adjust the
timing.
Dean, we need to talk. I didn't look up. About what? About our marriage. We're divorced, Mel. Papers were signed yesterday. I want to try again. This time I did look at her. She'd lost weight, her hair was unwashed, and she had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. Why? Because I love you. No, you don't. You love what I represented. Security, stability. Someone to pay your bills while you figured out who you wanted to be. That's not true. Seth's in federal prison, Mel. His assets are frozen, his business is gone, and you're facing potential charges as a co-conspirator. Now suddenly you love me again? Ivy looked up from the carburetor she was cleaning. Mom, you need to leave. Ivy, this is between your father and me. No, it's not. You made it about all of us when you decided to cheat. Mel's face crumpled. I'm your mother. You're a woman who gave birth to me 17 years ago. That's not the same thing. After Mel left, Ivy and I worked in comfortable silence for an hour. Think she'll keep trying? She asked eventually. For a while. Until she finds someone else to take care of her. What if she doesn't find anyone? Not my problem anymore. But I was wrong about that. Mel didn't find anyone else, and she didn't give up trying to get me back. For 6 months, she called, texted, showed up at my work, and even tried to get Ivy to intercede on her behalf. Then came the final confrontation. It happened at the annual classic car show in downtown Riverside Park, where I'd entered the restored '67 Mustang that Ivy and I had been working on. The same Mustang that had been gathering dust in Louie's junkyard for 3 years until we brought it back to life. We'd spent months on that car. New engine, custom paint job, original leather interior restored to showroom condition. It was our project, our way of rebuilding something beautiful from the wreckage. The car show drew hundreds of people from 3 counties. Classic muscle cars, hot rods, vintage trucks, all gleaming in the afternoon sun. I'd entered the Mustang in the best restoration category, not expecting to win, but proud of what we'd accomplished. Ivy and I were standing beside the car, explaining the engine modifications to a group of admirers, when I saw Mel approaching through the crowd. She looked terrible. Thin, haggard, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed recently. The federal investigation had finally concluded with her accepting a plea bargain, 2 years probation, and a massive fine that had bankrupted her. Dean, she called out, pushing through the people surrounding our display. Dean, I need to talk to you. Several people turned to stare. I recognized some of them, neighbors, customers, people from our old life together. Not here, Mel. Yes, here. Right now. Her voice was getting louder, more desperate. I want everyone to see what kind of man you really are. The crowd around our car was growing, drawn by the drama unfolding in front of them. Mom, Ivy said quietly, you're embarrassing yourself. Don't you talk to me like that, young lady. I'm still your mother. Act like it, then. Mel's composure finally shattered completely. You want to know who your father really is? She screamed, pointing at me with a shaking finger. He destroyed my life. He ruined everything I worked for. He's a vindictive, bitter man who couldn't stand to see me happy. The crowd was completely silent now, watching this train wreck play out in the middle of their peaceful car show. I stepped forward, keeping my voice calm and level. You're right, Mel. I did destroy your life, the one where you were stealing from our family to fund an affair with a criminal. I ruined your plans to leave me bankrupt while you rode off into the sunset with a con artist. I'm guilty of all of that. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. You made vows to me 24 years ago and you broke every single one of them. I was unhappy. So you should have asked for a divorce instead of cheating and stealing. I made mistakes. You made choices. Every lie you told, every secret meeting, every dollar you stole, those were choices. Tears were streaming down her face now. I loved him. No, you loved what he represented. Easy money, a lifestyle you thought you deserved, a way out of the life we'd built together. What we built? You mean your life, your garage, your schedule, your way of doing everything. Our house, our daughter, our marriage. I thought we were building those things together. I felt trapped, so you decided to trap me instead. Let me work to support you while you figured out your escape plan. The crowd was beginning to murmur, some people nodding in agreement, others looking uncomfortable with the raw emotion on display. Mel looked around at all the faces staring at her. and something inside her seemed to break completely. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You win. You get to keep your perfect little life, and I get to be the villain in your story." "You're not a villain, Mel. You're just someone who forgot how to be honest." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Maybe understanding, maybe just exhaustion. "I did love you once," she said quietly. "I know. I loved you too." "Did?" I looked at this broken woman standing in front of me, surrounded by strangers judging her for choices she'd made in desperation and selfishness, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. "I loved the woman I married," I said. "I don't know who you became." She nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting something she'd been fighting for months. "Take care of Ivy," she whispered. "I will. And Dean, I'm sorry. For all of it." Then she turned and walked away through the crowd, her shoulders sagging under the weight of everything she'd lost. I watched her disappear between the rows of gleaming cars and realized I felt lighter somehow. Not happy exactly, but free. "You okay, Dad?" Ivy asked, slipping her hand into mine. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good." Because they're about to announce the winners. The restored Mustang took first place in its category, along with a trophy and a $500 cash prize. Ivy and I posed for pictures with the trophy, surrounded by people congratulating us on the restoration. As we loaded our tools and awards into the truck that evening, Ivy looked back at the Mustang gleaming under the park lights. "We did good work on that car," she said. "Yeah, we did. Think we should start another project." "What did you have in mind?" "Louie's got a '69 Camaro that just needs some love." I grinned. "Let's go take a look at it." We drove home through the gathering darkness, past the Innovation Hub building that now sat empty with for sale signs in the windows, past the loft apartment where my wife had planned her new life with a man who'd never loved anything but easy money. At home, I parked in my garage and looked around at the familiar tools and workbenches, the organized chaos of a life spent fixing things that were broken. Tomorrow, there would be customers to serve, bills to pay, a business to run. Ivy had college applications to finish and a future to build. We had work to do. But tonight, we had something we hadn't had in months: peace. I turned off the lights and headed inside, where my daughter was already making hot chocolate and planning our next restoration project. Some things, once they're broken, can't be fixed. But some things can be rebuilt from the ground up, stronger and more beautiful than they ever were before. The key is knowing the difference.